When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. And it won't do no good to be crying out loud, babe, or cursing the sky.
Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and before I introduce tonight's guest, I'm going to make a pitch for, well, this show, but also all the other shows on public access TV. Right now, there's a bill in the Connecticut House, House Bill 5446, and you'll see on the screen, to extend the tax on cable and satellite companies to communication services providers. If you're part of Xfinity or Frontier, you get to see these shows live, and the public deserves to have that in return for the cable and satellite TV's income-making contracts. To change the method of funding community access television operations, the public educational and governmental programming and educational technology investment account, grant program, and also CTN. And some of our more politically interested viewers probably have watched legislative hearings on CTN, which would also be impacted by this legislation. And also, third, to report on a possible program to support low-income houses with broadband internet subscriptions. And if we want to keep public access alive, we want to see this bill passed. If you want information for exactly how to submit a bill to the legislature, you can email me. Rana@nlgreens.org is probably the easiest email address to find, and I can give you the links. Or you can call the cable company, SEC TV at 860-440-3154 to get more information also. So if you want to keep seeing public access TV, help us keep it. So now, so my guest tonight is Trina Charles, and I've known Trina for a long time, since her kids were like almost in diapers.
Yes.
But I've never had her on the show before, and she's the executive director and organizer for Step Up New London, which has been around probably for 8 or 9 years in New London.
Started in 2017.
And we're going to talk about the different kinds of things that Step Up New London does, and there are a lot of them.
Yeah, there is.
So welcome, Trina.
Thank you.
I don't know, maybe you can start out talking a little bit about the history of Step Up New London, since I can't believe you've never been on before, and also like how you started becoming involved.
Absolutely. So Step Up New London started in 2017 by a group of parents who were having issues in New London public schools with their kids. Some who have special needs, so they would have like 504 plans or IEPs. And they were having issues with navigating with getting special services for their kids. So a group of parents got together and they formed Step Up New London, which focused on ways of helping parents navigate through the school system in New London. So I worked for New London Public Schools for 7 years, and that's how I met Megan. I worked with one of her children, and she was kind of like, hey, I need you to come aboard, I need you to come along. And I was, I put it off for a little while because I was a little comfortable at New London, So I went ahead and joined on. I started off as an assistant, then I became a community organizer, then I became co-director, and then last year I became executive director.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And it seems really appropriate since having worked inside the system for a long time.
Absolutely.
You learn some things along the
Yes.
way or how to navigate
Absolutely.
it. And, as you know, since I worked for Head Start for many years in New London, it's not always easy to navigate the system.
Absolutely.
Not only when you have kids, who have special needs, IEPs, but even just regular stuff
Absolutely.
is sometimes very hard to navigate.
Absolutely, it is, yeah. And it seems like when the group of parents got together and when they were, trying to get around, just to basically get the special services they need for their kids, from what they were saying, they were getting a lot of runaround, and they didn't feel like they were getting the support they needed in order to get, what they needed for their children. And it happened a lot for a lot of Black and brown families, is where, a lot of the issues were coming in. So I commend this group of parents who got together and formed this, nonprofit to say, no, we're going to stand up and do what we feel is right for our children.
And I know it becomes, and this I was reminded of at last night at City Council. There were a lot of speakers.
Yes.
And the general topic, we'll talk about the specifics later, but the general topic was providing New London students with supports they really need.
Absolutely.
And you come up against like, oh, but can we afford it? And it's always been interesting to me which departments in New London you don't hear, but can we afford, 3 firehouses, for
Right.
example? And maybe we can,
Right.
but the question doesn't get asked, and it doesn't, and certainly some of the departments aren't put on the spot
Right.
and almost accused of mismanagement, which I heard a little bit of.
Right, exactly. Yes, yeah. I think it comes down to you have to prioritize, right? And how much priority is, number one, is the Board of Ed putting into our students, right? There's all types of things happening behind the scenes, but we have to think of the well-being of the students, especially in this day and age and everything that they're going through, right? I don't agree with them cutting the positions. I think it's very well needed, and I think hearing the students talk last night, I was so proud of them. They did a really good job. But hearing them tell their own personal stories of how these positions, these people in these positions help them out, I think is a real testament to why they need to listen a little more, and they need to work with the students a little bit more, right? And try to, come together and figure out a way to make this happen and keep these positions there.
Now, for people who haven't really been following this, can you talk a little bit about these wellness positions and what they do and what the impact would be if they were ended?
Yeah. So basically, it's my understanding that they're the wellness interventionists. And so basically, if there is a child that's in crisis, these people are trained in order to handle those crises in a way where they can de-escalate and try to get the child back on track quickly, right? I think it would be a very big misfortune for them to not have them, because then you don't have the staff available to help these kids when they are in crisis. A lot of time admins, they're dealing with something else, right? Or they're not in the building because they're at meetings or they're doing whatever. This is a person that's there, that's dedicated for this particular cause, that can go in and help the student, with whatever, not even in crisis, right? Even if they have something they need to talk about, maybe they don't have anyone at home they can talk to. They can go to this person, a trusted person that they know, that they're around on a daily basis, and they can have these one-on-one open conversations with them.
And of course, with fairly large class sizes, the classroom teachers are not able to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And then it helps out a little too. Like usually most schools only have like maybe one social worker, right? So social worker can't get to everyone at all times and can't be in all places at all times. They might have counseling services that they get from an outside source through a school-based health center, but also they can't be there all the time when there's so many
Right.
children that need services. So I do feel they need to find some way in order to get the money in order to keep those positions going.
So my understanding is that the elementary school positions were being kept, but middle school and high school
Absolutely, yeah.
are threatened.
Yes, it's the middle school and the high school that are threatened, which I think they need them the most, right? We're talking about
I think
preteens
middle
and
school
teens. Yeah,
especially.
absolutely, is where they need them the most, and this is where they want to take them out, right? I don't feel that any of them should go, not for elementary or junior high or the high school. I think they all should be there. And in my personal opinion, they can figure out a way to keep these positions there. It's just about do they want to and how they're going to prioritize the kids.
Well, and it's really tough in a way. Education is a lot of it investing in the future, and sometimes it seems as though we're quicker to fund, I don't know, pay more when we deal with a real emergency than just keep on, committing inadequate funds to prevent the emergency.
Yeah. I agree with you on that, right? Like I do, I'm like, wait a minute. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I think if they thought about it, sometimes you got to personalize things. You have to think about it if this was my child, right? If you got to
Right.
sometimes walk in other people's shoes in order to understand. And I don't think the powers that be are walking in other people's shoes or even imagining it because they don't have to, right? They don't have
Right.
to at all. They either don't live in the area, they come from a different lifestyle. They don't have to think about that. So I do feel, they need to put themselves as parents in another parent's shoes that, okay, I have to work and maybe I'm not there when my child gets home. Maybe my child has an issue or a problem and I'm not there to support them, right? Okay, maybe you don't have to deal with that, but think about the parent that does.
And in New London, there are a lot of parents
Absolutely.
who are stretched.
Absolutely. Working, sometimes 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, right? So that sometimes leaves a lot of kids, older siblings taking care of younger siblings. Not everyone can, afford after school programming, right? There's not a lot that doesn't cost anything. So yeah, it becomes a big issue and people have to think about that. You have to think of, the other side of the table,
Yeah, and I think of my childhood, which was a very long time ago. I was a young child in the 50s and early 60s. And it seemed like, for one thing, most families, moms didn't work or they
That's
worked
right.
part-time if they
Right.
did work. So, I lived on a row house, and if my parents happened not to be home, there were a dozen other doors I could knock
Right.
on. But I think our society has taken away some of those supports that were kind of built into our neighborhood at one time.
Absolutely.
And the schools and rec programs and other institutions have had to pick up.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I know when I was growing up, and I say this all the time, even when we have events and everything, I say we lost the village, right? Like the community was the village, and you would have someone there to help watch your children and, do stuff everyone did for everyone else. Now it seems that everyone is kind of guarded when it comes to their family lives. And I would love to see that village come back. I say that all the time to where the trust is there and it's okay to try to help, other people out with, helping guide their children. And everything doesn't have to be so guarded.
Yeah, well, things have definitely changed. But
Yes.
I feel as though New London, one thing that I'm very optimistic about New London, I saw on your website all the different groups that Step Up New London partners with.
Yes.
And, we can talk about some of those groups.
Absolutely.
And I think there are a lot of people in New London who are creating a different kind of village.
Absolutely, yeah. So we partner with Hearing Youth Voices all the time. We partner with them on a lot of things. We collaborate with them on a lot of things with Fresh, New London.
Now, you had a daughter who have a daughter who's been involved with Fresh.
Yes, yes, yep. And my son was also involved with Fresh too at one point. So yeah, let's see, Fiddleheads, we've been involved with them, Alliance for Living, Homeless Hospitality. In some way, shape, or form, we always find a way to collaborate with other organizations. It makes our work a little bit more fulfilling when we can, reach each other's audiences and combine in that way.
Now, tell me a little bit about like the principles that are guiding Step Up New London. It doesn't seem that you have a narrow focus on. It started as education advocacy, but it seems as though you pick up issues as they arise. So, what would you say is the general philosophy of like how you decide what you're going to be working on?
Yeah, so we still do work on education, but while we was doing work with education, one thing that we kept hearing parents say and bring up time and time again was housing, right? About there being not enough affordable housing around, safe housing, issues they were having with landlords, stuff like that. And so we had to stop and think about it and listen to what the community was saying. And so we decided, okay, we're going to include housing because housing and education, they intersect, right? If a child doesn't have safe housing or, they're worried about where they're going to sleep or whatever, then they're not learning in the right way in school. So it's going to affect their education. So we decided, okay, we're going to pick up housing also. So we've been doing some listening campaigns to hear what community members had to say and what issues they were having. Once a month we do a tenants' rights workshop, which we thought was really important because what we was finding was a lot of people were like withholding rent and stuff like that, which, okay, we get it, but there's a legal way to do it. And without them doing that legal way, they were getting evicted. And then once you have an eviction on your record, it's hard to find another place. So we thought it was very important in order for us to, to have these tenants' rights workshops. So we let them know their rights as tenants, but we also let them know what their landlord's rights are at the same time.
And we know there are people out there who are coaching the landlords as
Absolutely.
well. So
yes.
the tenants need to also know.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people, when we're giving them the information, they're just like, oh, we didn't know that. Wait, what about this? A lot of things that were going on were, the stories we've heard, were illegal, right? Landlords asking for extra money, right? Or landlords wanting their rent money before a particular date, or, they're not keeping up with the, any repairs that needed to be done in the house, or telling the tenants they needed to make those repairs themselves, and just a lot of things. And them being scared and having families not knowing that it wasn't legal. They would do these things not knowing that it wasn't their responsibility. It's the landlord's responsibility, but they were scared they were going to lose their housing, and they would have kids, so they would go ahead and go along with everything.
I think maybe even the rental market has changed over the last
Absolutely.
20, 30 years. We were renters for quite a while and rented a house, but it was owned by someone whose summer house was down the street, and we really had very little problems. But now it seems as though, I don't know, landlords are more distant
Absolutely.
and less connected with the community, less connected with their tenants on a personal level.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, housing just in general, even for owners, has become kind of a commodity. It's like it isn't really about human need to have a secure roof over their head. It's like, how can I own this property to give me a secure retirement, which I get, but we can't really, neglect the other side of it, that people need that secure roof over their head. Absolutely.
So what we're hearing and seeing actually is that a lot of the owners don't live in the area. A lot of them are from like New York or Maine, they do not live in Connecticut. So then what they do is they have these people that they call their property managers who really have no idea about the law and what it means to take care of an apartment, right? Or a complex or whatever it is that they're, taking care of. They have no idea about any of the laws. So they're actually doing the dirty work for the actual owners, right? So the owners don't have to deal with it. It's basically the property managers.
Now, are you coming across a lot of people who are really struggling with like rise in rent costs, especially since COVID, I think, started the trend, but it hasn't really gone down, I don't think, even though, in general, there was a parade last Sunday and a ton of people showed up. So people aren't just like staying in their houses anymore, but it seems like some of the shifts that happened during COVID haven't really stabilized back to where they were.
Not at all. Rents are climbing and climbing and climbing. And it's really hard, even if it's a two family household, where there's a mom and a dad both working and have really good jobs, they're still having a problem making ends meet with, the way that rents are rising right now.
Well, when the Community Land Trust started, and that was maybe also around 2017 or 18, a lot of research was done on, and even then, if you did the arithmetic, owners were paying less than renters.
Absolutely.
And I think that's even more true now. And even, we hear, you don't want to raise property tax. Well, I don't really want my property tax to go up either. But it's really a lot less than it would be if I were renting. I think my annual property tax might be equivalent to 4 months' rent if I was renting a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment.
Right. Yeah. It's and that's another thing that we've been trying to teach people and let them know about too, is the fact of home ownership and how to go about that also. Right. So. We try to get them help with getting their credit together, right? So financial, counseling to help them get on the road to home ownership. It's really sad that there really isn't any affordable housing. Like there really isn't. And the ones that were here are, they've been bought up by corporations or other people. And then the rents are, raised up again. And there are families that's been in New London for generations and generations who are now moving out of the area because it's no longer affordable.
Yeah, I feel for them because I don't know where they can move to that is affordable.
Right.
I have friends all along the coastline, in New Haven and East Haven, and they're also really having a hard time.
Absolutely. It's like it's a statewide, but I believe it's a countrywide issue also, right? Where rents, housing is just, everything is going up. The inflation, everything right now is going up. We're connected with the Connecticut Tenants Union, and there's a lot going on, like you said, like in New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, stuff like that. Everywhere, there's not really affordable housing anywhere. So it's about how do we fix this and where do we find a solution for it? Yeah,
and it might be a matter of just 100 little fixes and not necessarily one big fix.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Before the show, we were talking a little bit about accessory dwelling units, which, New London did somewhat relax its regulations on accessory dwelling units. But in my opinion, and, I have the votes to show.
Right.
It should be much more relaxed. I hear from people of my generation who say, well, when I was in that transitional time of my life, when I was, we were a very young family and we could live in an apartment, that was in a big family compound. And that was our first step into being able to eventually buy our own home.
Right.
And that first step, there just aren't a lot of those available.
Right, there aren't any of those available, not a lot of them at all. Like you said, the regulations, right? There too, why are they so hard? Why is this so stiff? Why are we having these issues and problems when there's tiny little fixes that can happen here and there that could help, a little bit of the problem? We're not going to say it's going to solve everything, but it could help a little bit with the problem.
Well, I was telling some people about this great article I read, like what zoning boards could learn from the movie Little Women, because there they had neighborhoods that had people of different incomes and different house levels. You went to cities, they had boarding houses, which have a bad reputation now, but for like a young person leaving home for the first time.
Right.
I mean, you think of it, it's really kind of like a college dorm.
Right.
You have your room, you share, the kitchen,
Yes.
you share bathrooms. But if we could kind of recreate that in places other than college campuses,
Right. That would
some
work.
of our young adults, late teens even, would have an option that isn't just staying with the parents.
Right, staying at home with mom and dad. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And if we had more, I think transitional housing also would make a big difference. Sometimes someone just needs a little time just to be able to save up money to be able to make that next step. I think transitional housing would be a huge thing also in the area.
Yeah, when Desegregate Connecticut was making their recommendations, I think one thing they had brought up was cottage courts, which are, actually I had a Head Start student in one in Waterford. It was like a small campground, a common, parcel
Yep.
with one shared outdoor area and tiny, like, I don't know, 10 tiny houses around it in a circle. And, for some people that could really work.
It could, absolutely it could. For some people it could work. I know even now there's a lot of like veterans, right, that go to the Homeless Hospitality Center. Now they're starting to see a large population of older people, and we're talking like in their 60s, 70s, are now taking up space now at the Homeless Hospitality Center. Why is that? What is going on? Why is that even happening? It shouldn't be at all.
Right.
There should be some form of apartment housing where these people are able to go to where they don't have to stay in a homeless shelter.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think the space needs would be that great.
Right.
But I've thought of that kind of thing myself too. I live in a house that's too big for what the needs are for
Right.
two people.
Right.
But if we were to sell the house and become renters, we actually couldn't afford it.
I was saying
We couldn't
you couldn't
afford it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
a crazy situation
It
that a
is.
two-bedroom apartment
It is.
would cost us so much more than just staying in the house,
Right.
unless we sold it for a killing, which we really don't want to. I'd rather have it like go to the land trust or to
Right.
some, it was for us the means that we could get a house for a reasonable, affordable price.
Right.
And, I'd like to pass that along to,
Right.
to future generations.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
it's kind of a quandary. So, okay, other than, so you mentioned the tenant unions, I think. Maybe talk a little bit about this tenant union trend. I have friends in the New Haven and Hamden area. And I don't know that much about it, but
Okay.
they're always talking about it.
Yeah. So the CT Tenants Union is a group of people. What they do is if you're like an apartment complex, or maybe if your landlord owns several properties, what they can do is come in and help you navigate and negotiate with the landlord on making fixes, making things better, to stop evictions, stuff like that. They can help do a legal rent strike. So it's a group of people that come out and they help, people navigate through this whole renter's world, right? And let them know their rights and how they can get around things with getting things done, and how to hold their landlords accountable.
And one thing, I don't know if they're working on this at all, but one idea that I had heard that I thought was really worth exploring is if a landlord decides to sell his or her investment property, in some places they have to give their tenants the right of first refusal on buying that property. And I think it would be kind of intriguing if landlords did sell, and maybe the tenants could get together and form a co-op.
Absolutely. I think that would be a really good thing. And I think another thing that I think would be a good idea would be like, as tenants are paying their rent, right? Maybe some of that rent is put aside. So if they do decide they want to sell or something, right, then the
Right.
tenants would, but that money would be on the side. So it wouldn't be a
Yeah.
big issue. So they can go ahead and they could take over. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to see more house. And as we know, New London has a very low owner occupancy rate,
Absolutely. Yeah.
if not the worst in the state, but it might be in the
Right.
state.
Right.
It's close, though. I think it's at about, what, 32% owner occupancy,
Yep.
whereas for the rest of the state, the numbers are flipped.
Yes. Yep. I think what happens is people think, okay, I have this. Well, they think of their apartments as cash cows, right? This is how I'm gonna make my money. You know, they're living elsewhere in their home, right? Their house, right? And they have this property, and they just let you know, we're gonna put the rent at this much, and I'm gonna do the minimum amount of work so that I can pocket as much as I can, which I think is, like you said, is another thing that's hurting this community, right? Because there's not a lot of owner-occupied properties.
You know, it is really a quandary. And anytime anything is owned by a corporation, legally, corporations, like, number one job is to make money for their shareholders. You know, I think about this when I'm thinking about health insurance and the, you know, for-profit insurance companies. The group that they have, like, legal responsibility to take care of are their shareholders,
Absolutely.
not their policyholders.
Right.
And the change in law that allowed that to happen has just been disastrous.
It has been, but maybe we could do something to bring it back.
I was hoping that one of the really good possible outcomes from COVID, and there weren't many good
Right, there
outcomes,
wasn't. Yep.
were that people would kind of get a feel for what, like, a universal health care system that was paid with tax dollars,
Right.
not, you know, and not fragmented, would look like. Because if people needed a COVID test, they didn't have to pay for it. They
Right.
didn't have to think, or if they, you know, when they got the immunization, they didn't have to pay for it. They
yep.
didn't have to think, oh, I need this COVID test, but if I pay for it, then I'm not going to be able to afford lunch.
That's right. Yep.
So I was hoping that people would see that this is a really good way to practice healthcare.
Right.
It didn't happen.
It didn't.
I
Not
was a
at all.
dreamer.
It's okay to dream. It's okay to dream. I think COVID just really flipped everything upside. I think everyone was just scared, right? No one knew what the outcome was going to be. You know, none of us had ever been in a situation like that. And I think everyone, like, in a way, it kind of brought out the worst, right? What everyone feeling like, what if something like this happens again? I have to make sure me
Right.
and my family are okay, and we have the means to be able to get through if something like this happens again.
Now, was Step Up New London affected by COVID? Well, I shouldn't ask, what was it? How was it affected by a couple years of people really not getting together in person very much?
Yeah, so that's when I started with Step Up New London. That's when I left the school and came on. We did a lot of things through Zoom, and we did that for a while, honestly. Even now, sometimes we're still doing a few things through Zoom because, you know, people still aren't comfortable with being in crowds. But yeah, we did a lot of things through Zoom, through phone calls, but also Step Up did a lot of things like they had a COVID fund where, you know, they were able to help people who weren't working with, like, food and rental payments and stuff like that. So there was a lot of things that Step Up was able to do to help families during that time, which felt really good.
So other than, you know, issues with navigating the school system and navigating the housing system, what other big issues has Step Up taken on?
So healthcare justice, we're strong allies for healthcare justice, right? So once again, as people were talking to us about, you know, education and housing, it came up again about, you know, healthcare. and how a lot of people were losing like their state insurance. People that did have state insurance were having issues with finding providers that were in the area. So that meant they were taking their kids out of school in order to go to doctor's appointments. A lot of people didn't have their own transportation, so they would have to use, say, like the curtain cabs or something like that. But then they'd go an hour away, their appointment was over, they would have to wait over an hour for them to come back, to pick them up. So that's another issue, and just how to live like a healthier lifestyle. We've collaborated with Fiddleheads before on getting people to go there and experience Fiddleheads and see what they have to offer. So yeah, that's another area wherein is health also.
And I learned recently, and Fiddleheads just started publicizing that they are taking SNAP. They're working on
Yes.
Eventually having WIC food items so that
Yes.
people will be able to go to Fiddleheads for things that are, just
Healthier and
Yes.
better, yeah.
They'll be exposed to Fiddleheads
Yes,
as well,
absolutely.
but also be able to get things that can be covered by their WIC.
Yeah, I think it's a great, like I just heard about, I believe through the SNAP program, they'll be matching, right? So whatever you get in like produce, they'll match that amount when you use your SNAP benefits. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think farmers markets have had that kind of thing
Absolutely.
for
Yeah, they have.
a while,
Yes.
and it's really good to see Fiddleheads doing it.
Yes.
I was kind of involved with Fiddleheads at its beginning, and one of the concerns when they took that space where they are is that the people who live closest to Fiddleheads are not really the main patrons of Fiddleheads.
Right, yeah. And I've spoken to, his name is Stanley, the new manager there. And we've had a few conversations about how to expose more people to Fiddleheads and what they offer there. And I think a lot of people don't realize what's inside of Fiddleheads, right? So a lot of times what we do is we'll get gift cards in order to, do giveaways during our meetings and everything. So that way it gives them a reason to go inside the store and kind of explore and look around and see what they have to offer.
Yeah, I think from the outside it might look kind of elitist.
Right.
But when you go inside, and probably everyone who watches this show has been inside Fiddleheads, but I mean the people who work there, it's like the most interesting staffed store I can think of in southeastern Connecticut. It really doesn't have an elitist feel when you walk inside.
No, not at all. It's it's like you walk in, very friendly. They greet you. They ask if you need help with anything. They're good with giving suggestions, right? Brad, I love Brad. He's a staple at Fiddleheads, right? Everybody knows Brad, but he's very helpful in any way, when you're going through the store. So I'm glad they have this program, and I'm glad a lot more people are going to be exposed to it.
Now, for Step Up New London, what kind of programs are you all offering right now?
So we do the tenants' rights workshop. We also have it's called Sister's Sister. We meet once a month for women, and we just talk about things about being women, being moms, working, things that affect us as women. I believe our man-to-man group is about to
I was going to
revamp up.
ask, there had been a man-to-man
There was
group.
a man-to-man group. So right now they're kind of rebranding and fixing things, so they're going to be starting up all over again. We're going to be in collaboration and trying to get some learning centers in the city, along with Hearing Youth Voices. So that's something to look out for. And then with our housing, we have a few things coming up. We're thinking along the lines of starting a new campaign with trying to get a landlord accountability program started. We're kind of toying with the idea and trying to figure it out. But yeah, those are some of the things that we're working on.
Now, relatively recently, I guess, you came under the auspices of the Better Way Foundation. And, Better Way Foundation definitely has New London connections.
Absolutely.
But maybe since they haven't been on the show yet, you can talk a little bit about what that group is doing.
Absolutely. So Step Up has been with A Better Way. I believe it's from the beginning, right? So A Better Way Foundation is an organization, and what they do is fiscal sponsor other organizations, which means that we all are considered a 501c3 underneath their EIN number. So through them, we get, resources and support as far as like me being a new ED.
Yeah.
I have a coach, right? So Laura Burfa is like my coach, and she's been helping me and guiding me along.
Yeah, and she's local. She's
Absolutely.
easy to access.
Absolutely, yeah. So we get help with like our accounting, stuff like that. So basically, they just help us navigate along and help us, grow in ways that if we were to become our own 501c3, there would be a lot of things we'd have to figure out on our own, right? But through them, we have a board, Jennifer Quay Hudson, who's the executive director. She's fairly new to A Better Way also. But we have access, to the coaching. We have an operations manager there. They help us with marketing, strategizing, stuff like that. So it's basically you have a support with you as you're running your nonprofit.
Now, they sponsor about a dozen nonprofits at this point.
Absolutely.
Are there any opportunities for people from the different nonprofits to get together? Obviously, you and Hearing Youth Voices are going to get together,
right?
Regardless, but I know people from the Connecticut Tenants Union and from Black and Brown United that are more New Haven-based organizations. Do you all get to do stuff together and meet each other?
Yeah, we do. So a few months ago, there was actually like a retreat out in Cheshire, Connecticut. So we do have, times when we get together, all, the sponsored groups, and we talk about, what we're doing individually, but how we can all help each other collectively.
And are people seeing the same kinds of issues, like wherever they are in Connecticut?
Yes, the same issues keep coming up over and over and over again, which makes it a beautiful thing because like Connecticut Tenants Union have mostly been working towards like the New Haven area up towards that way. But we're here, so now we're bringing it here. And they were like, we've never dealt with anyone down there. So we're like, okay, we'll start, referring people to you. So now Connecticut Tenants Union is coming into this part of the state now.
Oh, that's really, that's exciting to hear because many of, I've been involved with Medicare for All Connecticut, and many of the Medicare for All healthcare advocates are also involved with the Tenants Union.
Right.
Being near like Yale and all that, both groups are pretty active.
Yeah. So we're just exposing people to things that really haven't been in the area, but because we're all under A Better Way Foundation, we have access to them. So we can say, hey, this is what's going on here now in New London. We think you all should come on, come to our area. Let's see what we can do and how we can collaborate together.
So other than housing and healthcare and schools, what challenges are people, coming up with that you think you might have to, help with in the future?
Yeah, a lot of things that are coming up now has to do with like financially. People are wanting to be in a better position financially in order to be able to like buy homes or to buy cars, right? Or, get better jobs or whatever it is. So we have been thinking and kind of working a little behind the scenes with, like I said earlier, with helping people with like financial counseling. I think that's very important, especially in the Black and Brown community, right? That's something that's very important. So, maybe we'll venture in there a little bit.
It seems important because in the Black and Brown community in particular, there's often a lack of generational wealth.
Absolutely.
Because home ownership was not really either allowed or secure.
Absolutely.
You look at, I did not live in this part of the country during urban renewal, but the neighborhoods that got torn down were the Black and Brown neighborhoods.
Yep.
And so people who have homes that now, would have, appreciated 10 times in that 50 years
Right.
don't have that, that wealth to fall back on.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's really important to play catch up. And, if you, Shanice has been here, and,
Yes.
you put in like the fight for reparations
Yes.
at the same time. Is that something that Step Up New London has ever thought about, in terms of the
Absolutely.
fight for reparations?
We have thought about it. We have had conversations about it. We're still having conversations about it. But we 100% agree with Shanice and everything she says, and in the ways that she has brought it up. But absolutely, we agree with it. And, we basically go off of what the community comes to us with, right? Everything that we work on is not that, Trina decided we're going to do this. It's because the community came to us and said, listen, here's where we're having issues, here's where we're having problems, here's where we need help. So, whatever the community comes to us next and say, hey, we need help with this, then we'll be there to support them. Even if that means we had to learn everything about housing, because we never dealt with it before. We was always involved in education. So we had to go out and, learn about the laws and all this stuff in order to be able to share it with the community. So, whatever comes up next, I guess we'll hear from them. They'll let us know.
Well, that is kind of what's unique about your organization, I think, because most organizations, go into it saying, we want to work on housing, or we want to work on food security, we want to work on healthcare, and your organization is more like, we help people mobilize whatever they want to mobilize around.
Absolutely, yeah. So so as far as education, right? We're still working on it. It's not that we've left it alone. We're still working. But right now, the bigger need, the housing kept coming up. And we were just like, we can't leave them, right? We have to be there with them. We have to stand with them. We have to try to figure out a way to navigate things and to help them. So we really are a community-based organization, because we hear what the community needs, and then that's when we go into action.
So if people are watching this and they want to get more involved, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way would be to, number one, either come to one of our events or our community speak outs. That would be a way. You can always call us. Our phone number is 860-287-0311. We're located in the OIC building, which is at 106 Truman Street. Our hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 4:30. You can always
people
come
can
up.
just walk in.
They can walk in and let them know they're here to see Step Up, come up to Step Up New London. We're always there to have conversations with people. We always need volunteers for things. We're about to start fundraising, which is something new for Step Up New London, is doing fundraising. So we're going to be needing, volunteers and people to help us out with a few things.
So volunteers, donations.
Donations, yes.
What kind of work would volunteers be likely to do?
Yeah, so it depends on what we are doing, right? So what type of fundraising we're going to be doing. A lot of times right now when we have people who come and help us out with things, they're honestly helping us with our campaign, right? So they're helping us plan for our next tenants union session, or they're out talking to community members. They're helping us hand out, we have door hangers, right? They're helping us hang door hangers, stuff like that. They're helping make phone calls, do phone banking, stuff like that.
Well, I think we kind of did almost everything. The next Sister to Sister is just this coming weekend?
It is this Sunday from 3 to 5 o'clock at OIC.
And just show up? You don't have to RSVP?
Nope, you can
nothing
just,
like that?
Nope, you can just show up, yeah.
Okay, and you mentioned that the tenant training sessions are starting back up in April.
They'll be starting back up in April. And we always post everything on our social media. And we also, we hang flyers here and there, but we make phone calls, we do emails out. So yeah, you can look out for information.
And I'm guessing someone could just get in touch with you and get on your email list.
Yes, they can. Absolutely, they can.
Well, thank you, Trina. I learned a lot about Step Up New London that I didn't know. I want to remind all the viewers again about the legislation coming up. House Bill 5446, it's up on the screen. And if you can give testimony, the fact that you're watching this makes me think that you think there's a value in public access programming. And it's really the only really local kind of media we have anymore.
Absolutely.
I mean, the day paper is a local paper, but more and more, half the content is from news services and not really local news.
Yep.
So public access really is community and it really is local. So if you can testify and show your support, that would be great. And I have one other brief announcement. Last week, our show was a band, Paddywhack, and we announced that there would be an event on Friday, a Green Party spring event in Middletown. It is not going to be next Friday. We had it's embarrassing to say what the conflict is. The person who was supposed to be tending bar ended up having a conflict, and we decided that a St. Patrick's party without any alcohol would not be a draw.
Right.
So it will be an Earth Day party on April 19th instead of a St. Patrick's Day equinox party in March. So don't show up in Middletown if you heard about it. Even if you wanted to hear the band Paddywhack, you'll have to wait a month.
Right.
So anyway, thanks again, Trina, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll have to do it, not wait another 8 years.
We won't.
Okay. And we'll see you all next week.
When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall.